Welcome to a special edition of Lagnia-Pod. I'm Rob Holbert, your host. We're here with Caroleene Dobson, who is a Republican candidate for District 2 for U.S. Congress. Also with us are Ashley Trice and Kyle Hamrick. Mm-hmm. And so, Caroleene, thanks for coming in. I know we're in the closing days here, so you've been pretty busy, huh?
I have. No, it's been a final tear and whirlwind around the district, but very grateful for the chance to get to see a lot of folks I've grown to know and love, and also again to get to meet even more folks in the final days, 12 days left. So.
Well, I did see you got to go to the Conecuh Sausage Festival, so I was a little jealous of that. So
no, that
some
was
of the
incredible.
perks of camping.
Yes, no. There have been some incredible festivals I've gotten to go to. Conecuh Sausage Festival, the Greek Fest down here was amazing. So it's a challenge of trying to pace your appetite.
I was going to say.
I went to both of those at the same.
Do you have to eat somewhere everywhere you go?
Oh, yeah. And then there's a peanut butter festival in Brundage this weekend.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
like
every day
that.
a different festival, but it's great too. I've been able to bring my kids to a lot of those. Yeah. So it's been very grateful because I think it's important for people to see that I am a working mom just like them. My kids have temper tantrums just like theirs, and we're all in this together, because I think for so many folks, politicians kind of seem aloof and inaccessible, and I think that's where a lot of frustration comes from. Politicians on both sides of the aisle, it's like, how do I reach them? They don't live normal lives. They don't understand what I'm going through, and so for me, it's quality time to get to spend with my family, because it is hard to squeeze that in on the campaign trail, but also letting them know that there are a lot of times when I don't have all my eggs in the right basket too. So,
yeah. Well, is there any things when you started this process that you thought was one way that you found different at this point after doing all this campaigning?
Yeah, I really have just been struck by the graciousness of people, because I'm a pretty reserved person. I love people. I spent my childhood, my mom was a physical therapist in Wilcox County, did a lot of home health care, and she had a clinic there, and that's where I spent every summer in high school working in her clinic and helping people. So I love to help people, love to meet people, but I am shyer, more reserved. I'm not a jump in front of the parade type person, or I would not describe myself as a firecracker or charismatic, how a lot of folks describe politicians. And so I wanted to serve, but I didn't know if I had the personality type for it. And I think it's been revealed to me that people are really gracious when they learn that you're running for office, even if they don't like politicians, even if they don't like your party, they'll still hear you out. And I think that must be a subconscious thing, or maybe it's a Southern thing, but people are like, well, this is what she's doing. This is what she's supposed to do. Let me hear her out. And so I've been, and again, I think I try to tell people, especially young people, there isn't a personality type. You can just be yourself and have authentic conversations with people, and you don't have to frankly, I don't think our government benefits when we just have one category of people, or just people with type A personalities, or just people of a certain age group, or we need folks from all walks of life, from all ages, to step up and serve. And often, I think for me, what I've viewed as drawbacks, the fact that I do have young kids, I am a working mom. This maybe wasn't the best time to run. I am more reserved. Maybe the very reason that my voice needs to be heard. So I try to tell, especially when I talk to young people, was at Tuskegee last week, where they get out the vote rally, to if you see an opportunity to serve, and you feel called, don't let what you perceive as your reasons you shouldn't run to hold you back, because those might be the very reasons why your voice needs to be heard, why you need a seat at the table to share, the hardships you're dealing with, or the things that make your life more complicated. And so I think, again, this race, on so many levels, has been great, and hopefully activating people on both sides of the aisle to be involved, because for so long we've had general elections in Alabama where the outcome was kind of inevitable, so that creates apathy. Especially among younger people. So hopefully the this race has motivated some people to be informed and be involved and really think about participating and think about why they're voting and who they're voting for. So again, it's been a very unique experience for which I'm very grateful.
Yeah. Well, this district is not one that is obviously Democrat or Republican, which is unlike most in the state.
Right.
And so as you're out there, what are the big concerns you're hearing from people? What are the things people want to talk to you about?
Right. I mean, it first and foremost, the economy, just skyrocketing inflation, the fact that, a lot of people, things they wouldn't have thought twice about buying a few years ago, they're really having to take out of their grocery cart and think twice about. And so, and of course, also the rise in crime, but I view the two as being very interrelated. I think when you're under economic stress, when people don't have jobs, that, causes more domestic disputes. It causes more, which again, we've seen here in Mobile. There was I think homicides increased from 10 to 13, and most of those were domestic disputes. And, you could get the root of those, probably some mental health issues, probably also some, financial strains. And then also just hear from a lot of folks concern about the open border and the impact on our communities, the fentanyl crisis. I think of the ways in which the open border has impacted American communities, I think the fentanyl epidemic is the most significant in this district. The community of Sims has lost 3 young people in a span of a few weeks. They actually, to the point where they called a community-wide kind of crisis meeting Monday night. I think the economy, crime, and the state of our border and the impacts on drug overdose deaths that we've seen in this district.
Has there been an issue that maybe you didn't think about prior to running that you have learned about, going through the district on this campaign?
Yes. No, I mean, I think all of us having lived through COVID, the issue of mental health was certainly one that, is kind of, we've been talking about more, which has been good. But really the true lack of avenues and facilities for treating the mentally ill in our communities has become, really brought home to me over the course of the campaign, especially in our rural areas. Grateful to have Alt Point here, just down the street, Vets Recover here in Mobile. But there are a lot of counties that have no facilities, no avenues for treating the mentally ill. That puts a strain on our law enforcement. Often jail is where folks with mental health issues, and that they should not be stigmatized, but we've got to really roll up our sleeves, stop making, depoliticize this issue. This isn't a partisan issue. This is a public health issue, a public safety issue, and a humanitarian issue. But it's interesting, I expected to hear about mental health from healthcare providers, but I'm talking to county engineers and saying, what are some roads or bridges that you're having problems with? Well, really, we need mental health treatment. I'm hearing it in again, from areas where I didn't expect to hear that. And again, I think we are, and certainly when it comes to veterans care, I am the proud granddaughter of 2 World War II veterans. My mom's dad had injuries. He was injured at Guadalcanal in World War II, and then had PTSD and self-medicated with alcohol, and eventually died of an alcohol-induced stroke when my mom was still a teenager. So the issue of veterans' mental health is very near and dear to me. And again, the way the current VA system is set up, veterans have to be sober before they can even get in line to get mental health treatment. And as we all know, too, a lot of times when people, at the point at which they reach out for help, we're talking about they need help within hours, not within days, weeks, months. And often it is impossible to achieve sobriety without getting to the underlying depression, anxiety, PTSD, mental health issues. And so I'm very much committed to ensuring that we provide better mental health services in general, but especially to our veterans. There are 62,000 veterans in this district alone. Yeah. Veterans make up about 8% of Alabama's population. And especially as we see veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, we're over 20 years from, when a lot of those folks were deployed, and we're seeing them age and continue to have health issues. We really need to do a better job of serving them.
You may have followed some of the that very issue going on recently with the governor and the veterans, the board of the Veterans Affairs Board.
Right.
Do you have a take on that? I know it's a state issue, but
yes, it's a state issue, and I will admit that I should know more about the ins and outs of that. But given that that's kind of arisen in the last final weeks of the campaign, I have been really focused on trying to stay adept on federal issues and meeting voters. So.
Yeah, gotcha.
Getting back to economics a little bit, you said that's the one everybody's talking about, economy. What do you see as the right path forward to changing these issues, to getting that inflation down and lowering prices? What are the fixes?
We need to first and foremost get our spending under control, and we've got to certainly. I mean, we have funding needs in this very city, in this very district, that our federal government needs to be funding, but we've got to be spending more carefully, strategically, and wisely. Really focusing on ways in which we can improve the everyday lives of Alabama citizens. Under this administration, they've authorized spending $7 billion for electric vehicle charging stations. I don't have anything against electric vehicles, but there are people here in this district that don't have access to clean water, that don't have access to sewage. And so we need to be better stewards of our resources. And if we can get, it is a fact, the more the government injects into the marketplace, the more that inflation is going to continue to rise. People that are on Social Security, their dollars are not going as far. I spoke to a lady here in Mobile yesterday. She gets $900 a month, a retired educator. Yeah. That is inadequate to provide for her basic living expenses. And for many seniors, about 90% of seniors, Social Security is their primary source of income. So it is imperative that we get inflation under control. Another way, in addition to cutting government spending, is to become energy independent again. We were energy independent in 2019. And again, I'm for developing and innovating renewable sources of energy. But when we are actively kind of sitting on the non-renewable resources that we have here in this country and not responsibly developing them, we make the world more reliant on countries in the Middle East that are actively funding terrorists to provide the non-renewables to the rest of the world. We're making Europe more reliant on Russia for sources of non-renewable energy. And frankly, I trust American energy producers to produce non-renewable resources and develop them much more than I do nations in the Middle East. I think there already is pressure on American energy producers to constantly be developing newer and cleaner and more responsible ways of developing our non-renewable resources. And again, there are folks in this district that don't have access to reliable and affordable energy. Energy costs have gone up about 38% in the past 4 years. In 2022, Alabama Power implemented 3 separate rate hikes, and they were all based on increased federal regulation. So, being energy independent and also decreasing federal regulation will especially help small businesses that are struggling to comply with increased regulation, increased administrative burden.
With regard to, it's interesting for you to say this about spending, because it's not something we hear much about anymore, is it? I mean, every president that we've had in recent years just runs bigger deficits than the one before, right, including Republican, Democrat. If you were to go to Washington, would that be something that you look at? I mean, we don't talk about that very much either. Neither party does at this point.
No. And the reality is, I mean, we're $35 trillion in debt. Our debt payments are exceeding our defense spending.
17% now. of
Right.
of our spending is debt service.
Payment. That's right. No.
Service.
That's right. No. And we have got to, we're headed towards a financial cliff if we don't do something. And so, we have got, again, to, really reevaluate, where the money is going and focus on, again, fulfilling the basic needs of folks in this district, providing for infrastructure like the port that is going, that will pay returns in expanding opportunity and allowing businesses large and small to continue to flourish. But we've got to be a lot more strategic about how we are spending.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Everybody wants to cut spending except their
pet projects.
Right.
Do you think Congress would ever get back into a circumstance like it was back in '94, where there was a discussion about a balanced budget?
Mm-hmm. I hope so. I certainly hope so. And again, I think we can do that. We have to do that without eliminating earmarks, because earmarks are very important. And again, we have a lot of underserved communities in this country, but you just look at again, and I think also if we can cut back the regulatory stage, that would do a tremendous amount of good in freeing up funds that we could use for much needed infrastructure projects. This administration also authorized an additional $80 billion to expand the IRS.
Yeah.
Again, we see a repeated pattern of Washington insiders funding Washington. The average federal Department of Education employee in Washington makes over $100,000 a year, whereas the average Alabama public school teacher so it's probably a lower average in this district, makes $53,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So it's a question of where the money is going to.
Right. When one of President Trump's candidate Trump, I should say at this point, but one of his plans is to raise tariffs tremendously, or a good bit. I shouldn't say tremendously, but a large amount. What are your thoughts on that? Are you in favor of that?
I'm an advocate for fair trade. And again, my first and foremost loyalty and accountability is to the people in this district and to ensuring that we continue to create jobs in this district. It is a fact that Alabama, since about 2001, has lost 42,000 manufacturing jobs. Part of that is because the lack of fair trade. So we certainly need to be focused on, supporting our industries here in Alabama. But the reality also is that, we do live in a global world, and we do have a lot of foreign investors here in Mobile and throughout the district that rely on component parts from throughout the world. Obviously Airbus is a French company. They have, their parts and assembly are made throughout the world. Some in Germany, Austal, of course, Australian, up in Montgomery, Hyundai is responsible for 2% of the entire GDP of the state of Alabama. Incredibly important. And so a lot of their parts and components, they utilize 55 suppliers in the state of Alabama. So that's great. But then there are, of course, those parts and components that come from outside the state when it comes to shipbuilding, for instance. We certainly need to support our American shipbuilders. So, I'm going to be an advocate for what's best for the businesses and corporations here in the 2nd Congressional District, and ensuring that we have a fair playing field.
Mm-hmm. And you had talked earlier about when we asked about the economics. There are some funding needs in Mobile and in this district. We've already talked about, the investment in the port can make some returns. What are some other kind of key projects for you, if voted into Congress, that you would pursue for Mobile?
And you know what the number one answer has to be.
For this district,
right. Certainly the Bridge and Bayway project. That is much needed, and I will fight for funding to ensure that there are no tolls involved. The hardworking taxpayers on both sides of the bay do not need to be double and triple taxed on a daily basis for, again, just basic access on a federal interstate. And also, the airport is incredibly exciting. I think by the time the relocation is complete, recently heard Chris Curry speak, and he said that they estimate that will increase the annual employments by 120,000. That's incredibly exciting, but that also tells me there are going to be some real infrastructure needs. That's an incredible increase in traffic. Growing up in Monroe County, as the crow flies, the Mobile Airport was the closest to us. But because of all those lights on Airport Boulevard, a lot of times we would drive another 20 minutes to know that we could get to Pensacola on time. And so I can, testify that having the airport downtown is going to be a huge draw, not just for the Bay Area, but for Monroe County, Clark County, Conecuh County, anyone that needs to fly out, that's going to be a huge asset. But with that increased traffic, there's going to be a need for, I can anticipate, there are things I can anticipate, things I can't even anticipate. So I'm also ready and prepared and willing to fight for whatever is needed to ensure that we're, addressing traffic concerns, that we're, and I know actually I think this weekend too, the cruise ship is coming back to Mobile. So again, another really exciting opportunity, but with that comes infrastructure needs.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. So I think I believe that this district's going to be really one of the most difficult ones to represent, just because now how it's drawn. I mean, we were used to being lumped in with Baldwin County, which is fine. We feel like the same folks. We have the same coastal issues.
Sure.
Now we've got Mobile and Montgomery, two, urban, big cities, but then also all the rural counties that have different, like rural health care. And then, Mobile and Montgomery are both fighting crime. I was curious, like you said the domestic, are you seeing the same concern about crime in the rural areas as you are in the cities, or? Yes, no.
I mean, there's definitely been a rise in crime, and then just, again, continued strain on resources. Rural law enforcement's really hard for them to recruit young people, because there just aren't that many young people back.
But yes, off track there. But that's I'm prone to do. But how do you represent this entire district? It's because it is so different.
No, and it's been a challenge to campaign, but that's why I think it's so important that I live here in the district. And there is a direct flight from Reagan to Montgomery, and now from Dulles to Mobile. But my husband and I are committed to raising our children in this district. And when I'm not voting or have committee meetings, I'm going to be back in this district, because it's going to take boots on the ground. And, again, I think at least there's the perception that there are a lot of competing interests. It's Mobile and Montgomery, and it's USA and Troy, and it's ASU and Tuskegee. And making sure that I am accessible is really important to me. My opponent has a house right outside of DC, and his wife works in DC, and I feel pretty certain that that's going to be their home base, and that's why I think it's so important that whoever represents this district is going to be boots on the ground, especially when it comes to rural areas, because there are just a lot of folks who felt like they haven't been heard. Cities have lobbyists and chambers, and they can get to you with the big needs, but there's still a lot of needs in cities and in rural communities that you're not going to hear unless you're out in the district. And, the average member of Congress, they're entitled to 18 members on their staff, which sounds like a lot. But by the time you think about, what it takes to run a DC office, and then trying to staff a district as large, and kind of winding as this one is, it's going to also take the member of Congress having town halls. I know from growing up in a rural community, when Joe Bonner took the time to come to Beatrice growing up, it meant the world for people to really have that point of access. And then from there on, even if he only came once every few years, then you had a contact and you knew someone in his office, and just, again, that increased visibility is also huge. But, there are a lot of parts of this district too, like Russell County, for instance. They kind of feel like no man's land a little bit, because, they're kind of like the wild, wild east. They have a really interesting history when it comes to, Albert Patterson and, the law and order there. And then also for so many things, they're kind of lumped in with Columbus, Georgia. So they feel like they're part of Alabama, but then they also kind of feel like the redheaded stepchild. And so for me, it's been really important to spend time there because we have so many industries that support Fort Moore. We have so many veterans there. And, we have, every corner of this district is important, but Phoenix City is a city of 40,000 people. There's some real opportunities there when it comes to navigability of commercial waterway, Chattahoochee on into Barber County. Barge travel is a lot greener than a lot of other forms of travel, but one that we have to ensure that our locks and dams are operating. So just four out of the 5 navigable waterways in the state either cut through or adjacent to this district. So it's just there's a lot of just a lot of time on the ground in the field in the communities that needs to take place, and that is my commitment. When I'm not in DC, I'm going to be here sometimes with my kids and husband in tow, but we're going to be tromping throughout the district to make sure that we're representing the people here.
Well, Caroleene, we've kept you probably a little longer than we said we would, but I'm going to ask you one last thing. If there are still voters out there who are on the fence trying to decide make your pitch. Tell them why you.
I'm running to try to make life better for Alabama families. My husband and I grew up in Monroe County and moved back here 5 years ago because I was grateful for all that Alabama gave to me, and there was nowhere else I wanted to raise my kids. And I moved back not with the intent of running for office, but with the intent of trying to give back to a place that has given so much to me in one way or another. And that's how I got into this race, because I want to make life easier for Alabama families. I know that we have the best people on earth. I know that we have incredible resources. We just need to unlock those opportunities, and that's what I'm committed to doing. My opponent, again, has an impressive resume, but his entire adult life has been in Washington, D.C. He started leasing an apartment in the district 2 days before the filing deadline. And again, D.C. is his home. He's come back to run for this seat. But win or lose, I'm going to be raising my kids in South Alabama alongside each of you, regardless of what happens on November 5th. And I think we need more ordinary, normal folks who are concerned about where this country's headed, who are invested in raising our children here, and who want to fight for a better future. So I humbly ask for the votes of those who are listening, and I hope I get a chance to meet you if I haven't already.
Caroleene, thank you so much for coming in, and best of luck in your continued race. I know it's going to be a frenzy for the last week or so.
No, but thank you for all you do too, in spending time in Mobile. Again, this Lagniappe has been such a great source of so many things that are going on. I love the wide variety of issues that you cover, and just how you keep your readers informed and engaged and entertained.
Thank you. Thank you. We try. Well, good luck with everything, and we'll see you on Election Day.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Heroes Sports Bar and Grill now open 7 days a week at both locations. Ask about our new hot wings, the Singapore Sting and the Nature Boy. Woo! Come have a clipper at Heroes, Mobile's own since 1998. Heroes Sports Bar and Grill now offers curbside 7 days a week. Call 433-HERO for Dauphin Street or 341-WING for Hillcrest. Try our kick-ass spinach and crawfish dip. And thanks for supporting Heroes, a Mobile original since 1998.
Welcome to this special edition of Lagnia-Pod. I'm your host, Rob Holbert. I've got Kyle Hamrick with me, and today we also have the Democratic candidate for District 2, U.S. House of Representatives, Shomari Figures. Thanks, Shomari, for coming in.
Thank you for having us again, man.
Well, glad to see you.
First time on the podcast.
First time on the podcast, second time in the room. Well, tell us. I mean, you've been doing this now for several months. It's how's it going?
Yeah, look, we've been at this thing now a little over a year, I guess, at this point. Well, I guess we're about a week shy of when we formally, 2 weeks shy or so when we formally declared. But it's been about a year, and look, it's been a great experience. Going across this district, just hearing the issues that people care most about in their communities. A lot of similarities across this district. It's also been very enlightening, right, to be exposed to so many people who have such firsthand experience with things like hospitals closing in their districts, with things like not being able to recruit businesses because they don't have the sort of what I call life infrastructure to be able to recruit businesses. They don't have, modern temporary housing or long-term housing or broadband deployment, throughout the county. And so it's been or modernized school infrastructure. But it's been going well, getting to hear those issues from people, from the voters, and discuss with them how I think we can leverage my experience to help address some of those issues in their communities. And that's always a very rewarding thing to do. And so it's been going well. It's been going well.
When you're going out and talking to folks, what's the number one issue you're hearing about?
Far and away healthcare. And even more so than I thought. I mean, healthcare is always a thing, right? Yeah. It's always at the top of the of a short list of issues across the country. But even, when we got into this race, like the national health insurance, the national healthcare access conversation is always centered around health insurance. And, it's very eye-opening when you go to communities where some people will say to you, what good is insurance when you don't have anywhere to use it? Mm-hmm. And it's not, through that lens that we often view healthcare access. But I mean, to put it in perspective here, there are 13 counties in this district. Let's sit Montgomery and Mobile to the side because they're bigger. They all got multiple hospitals, right. All that stuff. So that leaves you 11 counties. 2 of those counties already did not have a hospital, Washington County and Macon County, Tuskegee. Wow. They already did not have a hospital. So that leaves 9. Just since we've been in this race, you've had 4 hospitals close in the remaining counties, like across those 9 remaining counties. Just since we've been in this race, there are at least 3 others that are struggling to try to find funding every quarter or biannually to stay open, like in Evergreen, in Luverne, down in Crenshaw County, in Greenville, and so it's a real challenge when you look at it. We got half of the counties in this district don't have a pediatrician. Wow. And so it's the healthcare challenges in this district are significant. And when you combine those challenges with the data that tells us that here in the state of Alabama, for all intents and purposes, we have the shortest life expectancy in the U.S., it's jarring. It's jarring. And so it really highlights the need for us to really get out there and focus on how we can improve healthcare outcomes here in the state.
Well, when you got started in this, is there something that has come up? Is there a topic that has come up more than you ever thought it would, or something you didn't even foresee that has become a big issue?
The hospital closures is certainly one, right? Yeah. Because when we got in it, like most of these hospitals, they don't release like public status reports,
right? It's really picked up since you've been in this.
Yeah, and like when you start seeing, the Grove Hill facility closed, the Thomasville facility closed, the Union Springs facility closed, like that has been like shocking, because when that happens, it opens up eyes in communities like, wow, like we don't have a hospital. Right. Or the hospital that we have has been so scaled back in terms of the services that they can provide, that it's difficult to do things like recruit companies here. Right. I mean, I've said that Nick Saban can't close a recruiting pitch to a company that begins with, we don't have a hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Who wants to live there? Who wants to set up their company there? Who wants to raise their family there? Right. And so that part has been surprising. I think the other issues we knew about, and we knew about some of the healthcare challenges, particularly in the rural counties. But when those facilities just started closing, that part was eye opening. But I will tell you, here in Mobile, the Bay Bridge project, we knew it was a big deal. We knew it was going to be a big deal. We were very fortunate to see some steps here through the Biden administration here over the past few months, sort of get that project off the ground. We hope.
Yeah. Let's not count anything yet.
Yeah, very, very fortunate to see Amtrak coming back this way. Very fortunate to see the port continuing the progress and becoming a deep water port here. So those things, I think what has been surprising somewhat is the sort of universal importance of voters across Mobile County as it relates to those issues, because a lot of times like those issues are just, sort of like, in the weeds sort of like issues that, people don't really focus on, but people like people that work at the port, they understand the importance of it. People that know people that work at the port, people understand the importance of getting our airport here with an international designation so we can get more cargo here. So that's been, pleasantly surprising as well.
As far as, do you hear a lot about the economy?
Yes. I mean, the economy and in the election cycle, you often hear about it, and we hear about it here. Costs have risen, and I think a lot of people have a practical understanding that, like no single president, no single member of Congress, no single member of the Senate can push a button and make costs go down. Like, we're in a global economy, and we were coming out of a very, very tough time with COVID and the impact that had on the economy here locally, as well as across the country and globally. But at the end of the day, like, people care about how things hit their wallets, and they want to know what we can do to A, help in that space, and B, from a long-term perspective, like, what can we do? But I can also tell you this, that, workers here in the state of Alabama make the fourth lowest wages in the United States. And so times haven't just gotten hard for people here in this district. Yeah. Times have been hard for I'd go so far as to say a majority of the people in this district, especially in our rural communities. And so what they care about is, what can we do to prioritize bringing the types of jobs that will, create the type of opportunities here locally, to where we can afford, to do more than just get by, but to build, wealth to a degree, and just to be comfortable in life. And so, that's certainly an issue that we hear about a lot.
What about crime? Is that something you're running across? And is the sensibility different in the rural counties than it is in the bigger cities in this district, or what are you hearing from folks?
I think the difference that you see in rural communities and say Mobile and Montgomery is that, because they are rural, they don't have that many, historically, they don't have a lot of violent crime. So when they have it, it's like a big deal. Mm-hmm. And so it's hitting them as well, right? 1 shooting, 2 shootings, 3 shootings is 1, 2, or 3 too many, that we should be having. And so we certainly hear about it. Montgomery had a stretch there over the summer, where, there was an uptick in homicides, and people care about it. I know the mayor cares a lot about it. In my conversations with Mayor Reed, like, that's one of his top things. Is like, look, man, we need to do everything that we can to get the funding here in Montgomery for us to be able to hire more police officers, for us to be able to invest in the type of programs that are going to help, push kids away from a lifestyle that's likely to end up on one side or the other of a gun, or that enhances the likelihood of that. And I think most people are realistic about the issue, in that the decision of a person to be willing to pick up a gun and use it is generally made years before they actually do that. And, we didn't get here overnight with our gun violence issues that we have across this state or across this country. You're certainly not going to get out of it overnight, right? But you have to be, practical in how you approach the issue, because people don't want to just hear, we're not going to get out of it overnight, right? They want to see that you're actively taking steps to try to address it. And, and that's what we plan to do in Washington. But it's certainly an issue that, and again, this is another one of those economic issues, right? It's hard to close a recruiting pitch as well when you say, hey, our homicide rate is up.
Yeah.
But we're going to do everything that we can, if we're fortunate enough to get elected, to make sure we're driving those resources here.
What kind of things do you see in terms of crime doing in D.C.? I mean, what are things that can happen on Capitol Hill that would really help that?
Oh, it's funding. It's funding primarily. I mean, we can, look, most things, the state of the law at the federal level is most things that we want outlawed, like against the law, they're already against the law. And, it's what we know, right? And what, data tells us, right? The fact that we have homicide rates, and violent crime rates, that we've seen here, that are actually against the national trend, right? Like, we've seen national crime rates and violent crime rates, coming down at a time where across much of Alabama, they are going up. And so what we have seen is that just having the threat of prosecution and having the threat of, sending somebody to jail for the rest of their life, that's not helping to stop the issue, right? And so we have to understand that, like, we got to invest in those programs that are going to improve life outcome opportunities for people, to divert them away from those pathways that enhance the likelihood of them doing those things. And from a DC perspective, that looks like investments in education. That looks like investments in job training and workforce development programs. It looks like investments in our law enforcement, our state and local law enforcement, making sure that they do have the resources to have a solid presence within their communities and be able to respond. But just funding police departments, that's a reactive measure. They don't get involved with violent crime until it's happened. Right. And so we need solutions that are going to be on the front side to reduce the likelihood of it happening.
Right. And then something I was curious about too, you had said that, a president or a member of Congress can't just like push a button and then immediately the prices start dropping. Yeah. One of the proposals that former President Trump has made is to increase tariffs, on countries that import into the United States. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, he seems to think that will help drive the prices down. I just wanted to see what you thought about that proposal and maybe any solution that you may have to driving prices down.
He also seemed to think that proposal would force Mexico to build the wall. And that didn't work. And here's what we know. Like we have to have tariff policies that prioritize American businesses. That is first and foremost. American consumers should be incentivized to purchase from American manufacturers, American industry, right? That's first and foremost. And I think that is a concept that both Republicans and Democrats should be able to align around. I certainly believe it. But we also have to understand that we operate in a global economy. It's no longer as isolated from an economic standpoint as we once were. Like, when you look back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, yes, America was far and away the largest manufacturing nation. That was before the emergence of primarily Asian markets in terms of manufacturing. And so our policies have to reflect a practical understanding that we're in a global economy. We saw when Trump issued the China tariffs, right? That doesn't necessarily drive down prices here domestically because there are too many companies, too many manufacturers here in the United States by virtue of us being involved in a global economy that still rely on pieces that come from outside of America. We've seen too many American companies. They outsource jobs, they outsource manufacturing. And so it has to be sensible. It's not just a blanket policy that can drive down costs. Can tariffs, incentivize us to buy American goods and drive down price of American companies? Sure. As long as you have, American companies that, I'll say sure to a certain extent, as long as you have, American companies, multiple American companies, that are going to compete for that business to do it. But if you don't, then you gotta have policies that reflect the realities that the main driver of prices coming down is legitimate competition.
Right. So I know you're short on time today. I know you're running busy, but I do have one last thing we want to ask you. This district is I think from a political standpoint fairly evenly split.
Yeah, I think so. Racially at least.
And you've got some folks out here, probably a lot of folks who've made up their minds, but probably some folks who are still on the fence.
Yeah.
Make your pitch. Tell them why they should vote for you. What is this for the folks who haven't made up their minds yet going into this last week?
Look, my pitch is pretty simple, and that's like with me in office, I am always going to keep the main thing the main thing. And what I mean by that is the main thing for a member of Congress is the people who send you there, the communities who send you there, the issues that are happening in your community. I don't need to go to Washington, D.C. to learn how to be a Democrat. I need to go to Washington, D.C. to represent the people of Mobile, of Pritchard, of Phoenix City, of Barber County, of Montgomery and Tuskegee. Like, we have issues that we need addressed here. And if you want someone that's going to go up there and spend their time every single day busting their ass to try to get the resources here to this district for what we need to address, then I'm your guy. If you want somebody that's going to go to Washington and just scream and shout about, fringe issues that are really not impacting, people here in the district and that are getting us no closer to being able to build a bridge here in Mobile, or no closer to getting us the funding to expand the electrical grid in Macon County so they can recruit more industry, then I'm not your guy. Because I am, committed to the fact that, a congressman should be a statesman or a stateswoman. Like, you should be putting the people in places that you represent first every single day. And if issues are not issues in your communities, then why are we spending our time arguing about them and shouting about them? And so I want to go up there and argue and shout from the high heavens about how we get funding here to keep hospitals open and reopen the ones that have closed. I want to go up there to make sure that we can get our hands on the money to make sure that we can build this bridge here in Mobile, finish this airport relocation, finish the port expansion, because that is something that is going to affect jobs. That's something that's going to affect the future vitality of this region, how attractive it is for people to want to live here, for companies to want to relocate here or expand here. And that's what I'm about. I hate to make it that simple, but that's what it's about. I think the main focus of a member of Congress, or any elected official for that matter, should be the things that are happening in your backyard. And how are you going to go about addressing them, and including the voices of everybody in your district, to have a seat at the table, in addressing those priorities. And that's what I want to do. I spent my career learning how federal government works. I don't agree with it in many respects, and there are a lot of things that we can change, should change, and we'll certainly work to change. But we know how to navigate it. We know how to sort of move through it and around it, and try to find the things that we need. And that's the type of representation that you'll get with me.
Okay. Right. Shomari, thank you so much for coming in. I know you're busy right now. And
thank you guys.
At the end of big race. So
8 days, 7.5.
Well, thanks for being here. And folks, get out and vote on November 5th, regardless of who you're voting for.
Absolutely. Go vote.
Thanks.
The Lagnia-Pod is a Something Extra publishing production. Executive producers are Rob Holbert and Ashley Trice. Music is by Some Pulse Sounds and Electro Animals. Only subscribers like you have access to this podcast. Tell your friends they can sign up at my.lagniappemobile.com. For advertising opportunities, please call 251-450-4466.